Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about date table. Now, why do we need date table? What are the advantages of using it? We'll talk about it. All right. Now let's start with the data set that we have here. I have employee details with a transaction for each month at the month level. So I know which employee belongs to which department or division, which cost center by month, and I also have the employee's demographic details. Now I'm just doing I've not modeled this data set. I'm just bringing it from my Excel document. We're not going to talk about modeling. This is not an ideal way to model it, but I just want to talk about date table today, right? So this is not in star schema, but I just want to show you date table. So let's talk about that. Okay, so to start with, let's say I want to figure out how many employees I have in my functional area, right? So I get employees. If I do a distinct on this employee ID, I should be able to get a count of employees, and I'll pull in functional area. Now this gives me a count of employees by functional area. So looks like most of my employees are in operations, and then I have a spread of employees in different functional areas, right? Now this is okay. All right, I know how many employees I have, but I want to know at any given point in time how many employees are in each of these functional areas. To do this, I have a period column here. Now if I pull period into this and maybe put functional area into legend, and maybe I can change it into a stacked column chart, this kind of gives me some information. Okay, for each functional area I can make out the number of employees by year, and then I can drill down to quarter and month. Let's say I just want to directly go to month, so I took out quarter. Now I see how many are there in by month. Now this is a little too confusing. Let's say I add a functional area filter, a slicer for it, and let's say I just want to see how many are there in my finance department. Okay, I mean, this kind of gives me some information. Over time I know how many employees are there. But if I want to compare how many employees are there in this year compared to last year, or this month compared to same month last year, or things along those lines, it's hard here. And then how about if I want to compare multiple functional areas, and I have to build 2 or 3 different visuals, and I have to train the end users to work with these visuals to get to the answer that I want, if I go with this approach. But I want to make it easier for the end users, right? I want to build some measures so they can directly get year to date this year versus prior year to date, and so forth. So let's see if I can do that using date table, right? So let me I like to go to this data view just to create a new table. So we can, if you have an existing date table, let's say you have it in a SQL table or a Excel document, you can bring it in, but I'm just going to create it from scratch here, right? So I'm going to say new table, give it a name, call it date, and I can use calendar function, which takes in a start and end date. Now my data starts in 2017, 12th month, and it goes through 2019. So 2019, 12, 31. All right. So there you go. I have my date table. I'm going to change the data type to date. I like to change the format as well. So there you go. Okay, so I mean, with this date table, you can obviously add year, month, quarter, and weekday, week ending day, and basically add more characteristics or columns to it, and use that um, with your reporting needs. But for now, I'm just going to stick with date. The next thing I need to do is create a relationship. So period to date. There you go. Now let me delete all this. Let me start my visuals from scratch. Right. Let me show you how easy it is now. Now that we have this, let's create a couple of measures, right? The first one I want is my year-to-date employee count. So I say new measure, and here I say year-to-date employee count equals, now there's a function called total year-to-date, right? Easy enough. And then here I'm doing using distinct count of employee ID, and the second parameter this function takes is a list of dates. Now the reason we needed that date table and I could not use the period table from employee details is because it needs a continuous list of dates, right? And sometimes we do not have transactions on, let's say, on weekends or whatever, so I cannot use the period field from employee details. So that's why I had to create this date table. So now I can use that. And this is the common thing with all the time intelligence calculations. We need a continuous list of dates, right? So now I have year-to-date employee count. I can maybe format it a little, add a comma to it, and once that's done, let's see, I can use that field, and now functional area. Okay, so now this gives me the same information, and let's say I add year from my date hierarchy as a slicer. Or you know what, let me delete this. There's a new date slicer which just came out. Let me use that. Let me just select date and make it a slicer. Now with this new slicer that was released in this past May release, it automatically makes this a date hierarchy. So let's say I want to see, I'm working with 2019 data. I select 2019. I can even pick through the hierarchy, but I'm going to select 2019. So this is my year to date for 2019. If I go to 2018, it changes. So this is working fine. Now I want to compare. When I look at 2019, I want to also compare what's happening in 2018. So I can build another measure, and I'm going to use this year to date measure in my prior year to date calculation. So create a new measure, and once this shows up, I'm going to type in prior year to date employee count equals. Now I'm going to use calculate function, and I'm going to calculate year to date, and I want the year to date for the same period last year. This is another function that's available, and again this takes the date continuous list of dates, so I'm passing it the dates. Now I have a prior year to date calculation formatted by adding a comma to it, and then let me add this to our visual, and there you go. So when I'm looking at 2019, this is my 2019 operations employee count, and this is my 2018 operations count, and so forth. Now I can see multiple functional areas and see the counts. Obviously operations is high, so let me do this. Let me make this better visually. I'm going to add a functional slicer, and let's say I want to compare finance, HR, innovation, and engineering. I'm working with these four, so I can now just select those functional areas that I'm working with, and I can see the year to date versus prior year to date calculations, right? So this makes it much more easier for the users to work with. They do not have to work with 3 or 4 different visuals, slice and dice the data to get to what they're looking for. And also you can you can, let's say I want to drill through or create calculation where I want to see this month versus same month last year or same quarter last year, things along those lines. It makes it, using this date table and time intelligence calculations, you can achieve all that with relative ease, right? So always go for the date table. Don't just rely on whatever your transaction dates are. It makes things a lot more easier in the long run. So hopefully this information is helpful. If you've got any comments, leave them below. If not, thanks for watching and have a nice day.